Hello everyone, I'm Zoey. Welcome back to my video. In today's video, I'll guide you through sewing a two-tiered float dress with flounce sleeves. This design is easy to make, easy to wear and has a gentle, cute style. I have distilled my knowledge into writing 5 ebooks. These drafting pattern books focus on guiding you through the steps of creating sewing patterns for specific body types, inverted triangle, pear, apple, hourglass, and straight body shape. They also help you understand body shape, body proportions, and offer solutions for achieving balance and harmony in body proportions so that you can create patterns tailored to yourself. The link will take you to an overview ebook about different body shapes, variations within shape categories, and how to get the book. Please find the link in the description. Now, let's get to the main part of the video. These are the pattern pieces I've already cut. I'm using that stretch fabric for this design. Since my fabric is bit thin, I'll be using a layer of Vaseline H410 to iron onto the front and back pieces for the structure. If your fabric is thicker, you won't need Vaseline. Place the wrong side of the fabric against the received side of the Vaseline, pin them together, and cut out the front and back pieces. Then use an iron to bond them securely. Mark the dots on the wrong side of the back piece. Fold the fabric right sides together and stitch along the dot from the outer edge inward. Leave an extra 3 cm of thread beyond the fabric to prevent the dot from unraveling with wear. Then press the dot flat. Next, place the right sides of the front and back pieces together and sew the shoulder seams. Then press the seams flat. For the sleeves, place the right sides of the 2 sleeve pieces together and pin them at the both ends. Trim the seam allowance of the bottom sleeve to 0.7 cm, leaving the main sleeve untrimmed. Then pin the 2 pieces together and stitch them with a 1.27 cm seam allowance. Trim the straight edge of the bottom sleeve seam allowance down from half an inch to 1/8 of an inch. Fold the seam allowance towards the trimmed side and top stitch to create a flat felt seam. I've sewn two basting stitches along the sleeve cup and pulled the bottom thread to gather it. Place the right side of the sleeve against the right side of the bodice and pin it along the armhole curve, then sew them together. Next, sew the two side seams with a 1.27 cm seam allowance. Use flat felt seam technique or zigzag stitch with a serger to finish the raw edges. Then press. Use stop stitch to finish the sleeve hem. For a knit stop stitch, it's best to use the specialized breast foot. Fold the fabric 1 cm toward the wrong side. Sew the top stitch. Then trim the fabric close to the seam, about 0.1 cm away. Fold it up toward the wrong side of the fabric again and top stitch to finish the sleeve hem. Finally, press it flat. Next, sew the front and back outside the seams and show the seams of the lining pieces. Then, stitch the armhole curve of the lining. Clip into the raw edge of the armhole, making cuts 0.7 cm deep and spaced 1 cm apart. Then, fold the raw edge 1.27 cm toward the wrong side of the fabric and hand stitch it to secure the armhole seam allowance, making sure it lies smoothly. If yes, any tension, use scissors to make additional clips in the seam allowance. Then press the seam flat. Now, sew the lining and main dress together. Place the right sides of the bodice and lining together. Pin and sew along the neckline curve with a 1.27 cm seam allowance. Clip into the seam allowance close to the stitching line, about 0.2 centimeters away, without cutting through the seam. Then turn the lining piece right side out. Fold the seam allowance of the sleeve inward between the lining and the main fabric. Pinning the armholes of the lining and main fabric together. Pin and finish the armhole seam using the slip stitch technique. To make the slip stitch, insert the needle through the seam allowance, touching just a few threads. Then slip it through the folded edge of the lining. Continue along the edge with small stitches, about 2-3 mm apart, inserting the needle into the seam allowance and back into the lining. Knot the thread at the end of the seam to secure it. Next, finish the neckline curve with a top stitch 0.5 cm from the fold on the dress right side. Then press it flat. To finish the hem of the lining, fold the raw edge toward the wrong side of the fabric twice, sew the top stitch. Now, let's assemble the skirt. The bottom of the dress has two tiers, the first tier with 2 pieces and the second tier with 4 pieces. Sew the pieces of each tier together and press. Use basting stitch to sew 2 rounds, 0.5 and 0.7 cm from the top edge of the skirt tiers, and pull the bottom threads to gather the skirt fabric. Evenly distribute the gathers. Place the right side of the bodice against the right side of the garter skirt and sew with a 1.27 cm seam allowance. Repeat it for the other skirt tier and finish the skirt hem with a 1.27 cm seam allowance. And that's it for this tutorial. I hope it was easy for you to follow. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel to see more tutorials. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye!